In the bustling heart of the city, where steel towers pierced the clouds and neon lights painted the night in a dazzling glow, there stood a newly opened restaurant, Aurora. It was the latest crown jewel of the illustrious Whitmore Group, known far and wide for its sophisticated dining experiences and unparalleled service. Yet, beneath its polished marble floors and chandeliers that hung like frozen waterfalls, a hidden story was about to unfold, one that would leave a mark far deeper than any review or accolade. What the staff at Aurora didn't know was that their elusive and enigmatic CEO, Nathaniel Whitmore, had decided to visit that evening, not as himself, a powerful figure known across the industry, but undercover, dressed in a weathered coat, a faded cap pulled low over his eyes, and round, old-fashioned glasses. He intended to experience Aurora not as an owner, but as an ordinary guest. He wanted to feel the pulse of his restaurant, to hear its heartbeat without the filter of titles and expectations. Yet, Nathaniel had no idea that this night would offer him far more than insight into his business. It would remind him of something he'd nearly forgotten. The night was alive with energy. Laughter echoed softly through the dining hall, mingling with the gentle hum of conversation and the delicate clink of cutlery on fine china. Every table seemed to sparkle under the glow of soft amber lights. Nathaniel settled himself in a quiet corner by the large bay window, his gaze sweeping the room with a practiced but curious eye. And that's when he noticed her. Her name was Alara, a new waitress, young and bright, with a heart full of hope and a spirit that life had not yet broken, though it had tried. It was only her 5th day on the job. She wore the uniform of Aurora like it was tailored just for her, but there was a softness to her presence that no training could teach. Her steps were light, graceful, weaving seamlessly between the crowded tables. Though she carried herself with the calm of someone in control, Nathaniel's experienced eyes caught the tiny signs, the quick glances toward the kitchen, the small, silent breaths she took before approaching each table. She was learning, but she was learning fast. When Alara approached his table, she did so with a genuine smile. Her deep brown eyes sparkled like autumn sunlight through amber glass. "Good evening, sir," she greeted, her voice soft yet full of quiet confidence. "Welcome to Aurora. How may I serve you tonight?" Nathaniel, hidden behind his disguise, found himself momentarily speechless. He had expected efficiency, perhaps even rehearsed politeness. But this was something different. There was sincerity in her words, warmth in her tone. She wasn't serving because it was her job. She was serving because she cared. "Surprise me," Nathaniel replied after a pause, his voice quieter than he'd intended. Alara's smile widened slightly. "I think I have just the thing," she said, her voice brightening. There was no hesitation. She was already turning toward the kitchen, the hem of her apron swaying behind her. Nathaniel watched her go, a strange, unfamiliar tug at his heart. Minutes later, Alara returned with a dish that wasn't on the menu, a simple but elegant risotto with wild mushrooms and a hint of truffle oil. She set it down with a gentle grace. "Chef Mateo says it's his mother's recipe," she said softly. "Comfort food, but refined. I thought, sometimes we all need a little comfort." Nathaniel took a bite. The flavors were delicate yet rich, familiar yet new. It wasn't just good. It was heartfelt. As he ate, Alara stood by quietly, ready if he needed anything, but respectful of his space. Eventually, he found himself wanting to speak. They talked, first about the meal, then about life. Alara told him about her dreams, how she'd grown up in a small town called Silverbrook, how she'd always wanted to be a chef but took the waitress job to pay for culinary school, how she believed kindness could change people's days, sometimes even their lives. She spoke of her mother, who had raised her alone after her father disappeared when she was young. She always said, Alara explained, that no matter how hard things get, you should be the kind of person who makes life a little easier for someone else. Nathaniel listened, captivated. She reminded him so much of someone he used to know, someone he had lost. His mother had said something similar to him once, long before the Whitmore Group, long before the endless meetings and cold boardrooms. "You remind me of her," he said quietly, almost to himself. Alara smiled gently. People like that, they stay with you, she replied, her voice tinged with nostalgia. My father, when he was around, he used to speak with this kind of quiet strength. Like you do. Nathaniel's throat tightened. His father had been a quiet man as well. Strong. Kind. It had been years since he thought of him in such vivid color. Time passed unnoticed as they shared stories. Nathaniel spoke of building his empire, of the mistakes and the lessons. For the first time in a long time, he wasn't CEO Nathaniel Whitmore. He was just a man talking with someone who saw him not for his wealth, but for his humanity. But not everyone that night shared their warmth. Across the room, watching with cold, narrowed eyes, stood Leonard, a manager whose cruelty was an open secret among the staff. Leonard had been making Alara's life miserable since her first day, always with veiled threats and cutting remarks. And now, he saw an opportunity. As Alara brought Nathaniel the bill, the CEO patted his pockets and frowned. I seem to have left my wallet at home, he said with genuine regret. I'm sorry. Without hesitation, Alara smiled. Don't worry, she said softly. I'll cover it for you. It might take a week's tips, but it's worth it to make sure you leave with a smile. Her sincerity shone through. But Leonard was already stalking toward them. What is this? Leonard sneered, his voice loud enough to turn heads. You think this is some kind of charity? We don't serve freeloaders here. The dining room fell silent. All eyes were on them. Alara's face paled, but she stood her ground. He's a guest, she said calmly. And I made a choice. Leonard laughed cruelly. You don't get to make choices. Not here. Both of you out. That's when Nathaniel stood. His disguise, hat, glasses, and all seemed to fall away as he straightened to his full height. His voice was quiet but cutting. You're right, he said. This isn't a charity. Leonard smirked. But it is a place of kindness, Nathaniel continued, his eyes turning sharp as steel. A place of compassion. A place of excellence. And you, Leonard, have failed on all counts. The room gasped. Leonard's smug expression faltered. This young woman, Nathaniel said, turning to Alara with pride in his eyes, has shown more grace and professionalism in one night than you have in your entire career. He looked around at the diners, at the staff. She represents the future of Aurora. You, Leonard, you're done. There was a beat of stunned silence, then applause. Slow at first, then rising. Patrons cheered. Some stood. The staff, long oppressed by Leonard's rule, exchanged hopeful looks. Leonard stammered, then turned and stormed toward the exit. Nathaniel turned back to Alara. You were willing to risk your job for a stranger, he said. That tells me everything I need to know. Tears shimmered in her eyes, but she blinked them away with a grateful smile. That night, Nathaniel formally appointed Alara as the new manager of Aurora. She accepted, though her journey had only just begun. And as they stood together, looking out at the restaurant's warm lights and joyful guests, Nathaniel realized he had found something far more valuable than a profitable venture. He had found hope. He had found faith in people again. Alara's story didn't end there. She worked tirelessly, transforming Aurora into not just a fine restaurant, but a haven for anyone who walked through its doors. Her kindness inspired others, staff and patrons alike. And Nathaniel visited often, not as a CEO, but as a friend. Because sometimes the most important lesson isn't found in profits or praise, but in the quiet courage to be kind. And so, dear listener, always remember, you never know who's watching. But even if no one is, kindness matters. It always does. Thank you for listening. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like and share it with someone who needs a little hope today. We'll see you in the next video. Until then, be kind, be brave, and never stop believing in the good.